His dad's like a billionaire. He's got tons of money, but he's not
savage.
lazy at all.
No, he's
like he flies in the face of this like long-standing belief that we all had that if you come from a rich family, you can't be a great fighter.
Yeah, dude, he's Batman.
It doesn't matter if you come from the ghetto. He's gonna fuck you up.
He does not give a fuck.
Like some fucking dude's like, I'm from the favelas. You know,
cool.
I did like, good luck.
Cool, man.
Good luck with that fucking Armenian psychopath.
Yeah, and he's pulling up in a Maybach.
Yeah,
fucking eating caviar.
He pulls into LA. I watch his YouTube videos.
Yeah.
He shows him training and all the different stuff that he does. He when he lands in LA, he goes immediately to an exotic rental car place and rents a Lamborghini and drives it to the training lab. Like,
bro,
it's
not the way it's supposed to work, but he pulls it off.
Bro, good luck with that guy. Good luck with that guy.
Go and make fun of him for being rich.
Built like a Greek god.
Yeah.
Can wrestle like a fucking elite top tier wrestler. And he can strike. And he can submit you.
The fight with Arman, it's gonna be a good fight. With him, he thinks that he's tough. He thinks that like he's wrestling is I don't know what. Like he feels that he's an Olympic champion. Anyways, if he's the best in the world in wrestling, when it comes to the octagon, bro, I'm the king. In there, I'm the king. I do with you whatever I wanna fucking do. And I told him like I'm gonna break his job in the first round. He's gonna try to take me down since the beginning of the fight. And when he's gonna realize that, bro, it's not that easy. It's not that easy to take these legs and take me down, especially to control me on the ground, you crazy. And then he's gonna start panic. He's gonna be panicked and I'm gonna break his jaw, bam.
So yeah, like I said, I'm leaning Arman by submission in this fight. I think that's probably how most people are picking. Again, even Tapology has it there. But I just will warn people in this fight, we did see Arman get clipped in that Joaquim Silva fight. I know there's a couple fights back. Ruffy does have devastating knockout power. Arman's got to be careful here. Don't mess with fire here. Arman's best method here would be to go for those takedowns. Again, he didn't get a ton in some of his past fights, but he's got to go for those takedowns. He's got to work that ground game. If he stays striking, I think he'll be comfortable. You just got to worry about that power, because if you look at Arman's past opponents, Dan Hooker does have knockout power, but you're getting a much older, battered Dan Hooker at 35 years of age. Charles, same thing. Again, Charles does have knockout power too, but again, we're getting a older Oliveira at 34 and someone who had some setbacks as well. Again, Dariush does have some power too. Joaquim Silva, like I said, of all guys, did clip him in that fight. And then outside that, Alvarez has some pretty good KO power. I'll give him that. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, he hasn't, I'd say Ruffy is the most devastating striker he's fought probably in recent memory. I know Oliveira's on that level too, but I think Ruffy's right up there as well. So just something to keep in mind. I think if you are going to be betting Ruffy in this fight, you take him by knockout. I don't think he wins any other way. But like I said, I think Arman's submission is probably your best bet.
From the conversations I had on the table being discussed, but basically the responses I was getting in regards to this fight were TBD, TBD. And then they went with Ruffy, and it's just like, I was like, oh, this is unexpected. And the response I got was like, well, people like to put the cart before the horse. But it seems like Charles was the direction they were going. It was never a done deal. And I assume, just based on the reports you've seen, which I think we can kind of put two and two together, the unfortunate news of the passing of Alan Nascimento this week is probably a catalyst, I would say is fair, as to why Charles Oliveira is not competing on this card. If he ever was going to compete on this card, now that was just off the table. So yeah, this one kind of threw me for a loop. I thought you could go a number of different directions with this. Could have done Patty. That would have made a lot of sense. Patty,
you reckon he'd be ready in time?
I mean, for an opportunity to fight in LA on what, 6 weeks notice against the #1 contender.
But co-main event, Arman Tsarukyan is finally returning. Okay, he's taking on Mauricio Ruffy, right? Arman Tsarukyan, we last saw him, what was it? October, November, taking on Dan Hooker, made short work of him, but since then, he's been absent. It's been almost a bloody year. Yes, he's the master of the side quest. Yeah, he's out there wrestling at RAF, he's doing all kinds of shit.
Tsarukyan running Faber off the mat.
He's staying busy. He's certainly staying in the public eye with the help of Nina Drama, flying all over the world in his private jet, doing podcasts, just doing appearances, enjoying life, eating caviar, right? Just living it up, the son of a billionaire. Why wouldn't you do that, right? And he's taking on Mauricio Ruffy. Now, Mauricio Ruffy is a very dangerous guy. We saw him at the White House. He absolutely smoked Michael Chandler. And that was one-way traffic all day long. Against Rafael Fiziev at the start of the year. The man's been busy. This is the third fight of the year, by the way. Against Fiziev, second round, knocked him out. I think it was a straight right hand, right? Beautiful shot, took him out. But before that, it was Paris. Benoit Saint-Denis. And Benoit Saint-Denis absolutely ragdolled him before getting a submission due to face crank in the second round, right? And if Benoit Saint-Denis can ragdoll Mauricio Ruffy all around the place, then you better bet your bottom dollar that Arman Tsarukyan can. Now,
Arman Tsarukyan and Mauricio Ruffy are heading into a fight that has sparked plenty of debate across the MMA world. Experts have pointed to Arman's elite wrestling and ground game as a major advantage, while Ruffy's explosive striking and knockout power could make every exchange dangerous. The biggest question is whether Arman can close the distance safely and get the fight to the mat. With both fighters bringing completely different strengths, predictions have been split on how this matchup could unfold.
Well, let me take my fourth swing at it. Apparently fourth time is a charm. Arman Tsarukyan will be taking on Ruffy. Now, I love it. I gotta tell you, I had some problems with the Charles match. I had some problems just because I've seen those guys fight. I've seen them before. And then there was talk that there was going to be no BMF. They're going to move to 5 rounds. Like, we were very close with some of the information that we had. And we got the 5 rounds down, for example. It does appear to be a true #1 contenders match, but this is a very big deal that Arman and Ruffy are now off the board. It's a very big deal. I mean, the big question of what is next for Justin Gaethje. And we're not going to know what's next just by listening to Justin, but if that's what we're going to take for now for our clues, like by example, Justin says, I'm not going to do any rematches. Now, that doesn't actually mean that he won't do a rematch, by example, but let's operate under that. If he's not going to do a rematch, Ruffy was a legitimate possibility. Tsarukyan, very clear #1 contender.
Like many UFC analysts looking at Arman Tsarukyan versus Mauricio Ruffy, James Lynch leaned heavily towards Tsarukyan, but he did not see it as a completely safe fight. He picked Arman to win by a third-round submission, mainly because of the difference in wrestling and experience. Lynch pointed out that Ruffy had dangerous striking and serious knockout power, especially early in the fight, but he believed Arman's ability to mix takedowns with his improving boxing would eventually give him control.
By decision. What is going to be my pick for this fight? I'm going to be going with Arman Tsarukyan. I'm going to go with the odds here and going with how most people think. And I'm going to go a bit of a later submission. I'll go like 3rd round submission in this one. I think it'll be a little bit later than the Saint Denis fight, but we'll have to see how that ends up going. So why am I going submission a bit later? Well, a couple reasons for that. So if you look at Arman, while he does have a great ground game, it's the least amount of method victory for him. So only 26% of his wins, just 6 total, are by submission. He's got more knockout and more decision wins. So that's another reason why I'm leaning a bit of a later submission in this one. Arman's last KO win was in December of 2023, so he actually hasn't had a lot of knockouts like recently. And Ruffy hasn't been KO'd since 2019. Ruffy also has only been he's only been submitted 1 time in his career. So again, I think it'll be a little bit later in the fight. Ruffy's striking is dangerous early. He has a puncher's chance, obviously, but especially with the speed and kicking game. But Benoit Saint-Denis exposed, in my opinion, some holes in his defensive grappling that Tsarukyan is even better equipped to exploit, in my opinion.
Lynch's biggest reason for picking Arman was the Russian's wrestling. He noted that Tsarukyan averages more than 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, while regularly fighting elite opposition. Ruffy, meanwhile, had never been tested over 5 rounds in the UFC and had shown some defensive grappling weaknesses in his loss to Benoit Saint-Denis. Lynch felt Arman was much better equipped to expose those weaknesses, especially once the fight moved into the later rounds.
Tsarukyan's wrestling should be the biggest difference. He averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes and has constantly controlled elite opposition. Tsarukyan has also fought 5-round main events before, while Ruffy has never been tested over 25 minutes in the UFC. I'd also argue that Arman's fought way better opposition. You look at the names here, for the most part. Let's forget all these RAF fights, because again, I don't think the competition there is good. Dan Hooker's been ranked for a while. That's a good win. Oliveira's a great win. Dariush, he's been finished in the first round a bunch of times, but still ranked. Joel Alvarez is a win that has aged quite well, even though he's in a different weight class. Like I said, the Gamrot fight, people felt he won. He's been ranked for a while, so I'd say overall he's fought better guys. He was in there with Islam, and remember, Islam didn't finish him in that fight either, so I think that's a badge of honor as well. Huge step up for Ruffy. Again, his only two really sort of notable, like as of like 2026, the only two notable opponents he's fought really are Saint Denis and Physique. King Green, I know, has been kind of, all over the place, but he's not really a contender.
The brothers repeatedly emphasize that every second Arman spends standing with Ruffy carries serious danger. They liked Arman's chances on the ground, believing he could potentially take Ruffy down, control him, and even find a submission. They also praised Arman's underrated striking, especially his kicking ability, while explaining that his team is comfortable letting him strike, because opponents know the threat of his wrestling is always there. At the same time, they expected Ruffy to avoid shooting for takedowns himself because taking Arman to the ground would play directly into Tsarukyan's strongest area.
We're going to find out. That's the beautiful thing about this sport. But for every second that fight is on the feet, it's dangerous for Arman Tsarukyan.
Yeah, Ruffy is such an exciting guy. And I love that he said, Charles Oliveira is the harder fight for me, but Mauricio Ruffy is a much more dangerous fight for me. And, he doesn't want to get out there and just mix it up on the feet with Ruffy, because we saw what happened to Chandler when he was trying to do that. And we know that Chandler's not the wrestler that Arman Tsarukyan is, but he didn't even have an option to change levels in close distance on Ruffy. There was no opportunity for that whatsoever. Arman's striking is actually underrated. He's good with his kicks. He's like Team Habib. You get Islam and them. They are totally fine to stand and strike with you because they know you're not going to shoot a takedown on them. Like, we know Arman Tsarukyan doesn't need to work his sprawls and stuffing takedowns now that he's signed to fight Mauricio Ruffy. Mauricio Ruffy is a smart guy. He's not going to close distance and try to take Arman down, because that would be a world of trouble for him that would likely end as soon as the fight got to the ground. I think Arman's skills on the ground are next level. We're seeing a lot of wrestling out of him, but his jiu-jitsu and his submission skills are very...
They were also impressed by Ruffy's confidence and composure, particularly after his performance against Michael Chandler. The brothers noted that Ruffy handled the pressure of fighting on the UFC's biggest stage without showing obvious nerves, then went out and dismantled Chandler. Still, they viewed Arman's wrestling and submission game as the major obstacle. They did not dismiss Ruffy's chances at all, especially because of his knockout power, but they clearly saw the ground game as Arman's biggest advantage. They also believed the 5-round format was important because it suggested Arman was being prepared for championship-level fights. If he could beat Ruffy, they felt it would put him in a strong position for another title opportunity.
High level, and I'm excited to see how this fight goes, because if Ruffy can come out with the same confidence he had at the White House, I mean, the biggest stage the UFC's ever put on, and he didn't have any pre-fight jitters. I didn't see any sort of issue or nerves out of him, and he went and dismantled Michael Chandler. If he can beat Arman Tsarukyan with how big a star Arman is right now, I mean, now you're talking about the Brazilian Conor McGregor for the lightweight division. His striking is, similar, the stance of vintage Conor, not the boxer style Conor. Yeah, and I don't predict for you that if he throws a jumping kick that he's going to tear his ACL when he lands, but I actually really like the fight, and I was only intrigued in the Charles Oliveira rematch for Arman because of the 5 rounds. But I also thought there needed to be a belt on it. The BMF had an opportunity to be put up on the line, but they were basically very quick to say BMF is not on the line, but it will be 5 rounds. So it's an indication that they're prepping Arman Tsarukyan for 5-round environments, which obviously means he's going to be fighting for a world title if he can beat Mauricio Ruffy. I just can't wait to see that one.
Yes. Michael Bisping was strongly leaning toward Arman Tsarukyan in this matchup, mainly because of the huge difference in wrestling ability. He pointed out that Mauricio Ruffy had already shown how dangerous he could be on the feet, especially after his dominant win over Michael Chandler. But Bisping believed Arman had the perfect skill set to take that away. In particular, he compared Ruffy's loss to Benoit Saint Denis, where he was repeatedly taken down and controlled, and suggested that Arman could do something very similar.
Now, Mauricio Ruffy is a very dangerous guy. We saw him at the White House. He absolutely smoked Michael Chandler. And that was one-way traffic all day long. Against Rafael Physique at the start of the year, the man's been busy. This is the 3rd fight of the year, by the way. Against Physique, 2nd round, knocked him out. I think it was a straight right hand, right? Beautiful shot, took him out. But before that, it was Paris, Benoit Saint Denis. And Benoit Saint Denis absolutely ragdolled him before getting a submission due to face crank in the 2nd round, right? And if Benoit Saint Denis can ragdoll Mauricio Ruffy all around the place, then you better bet your bottom dollar that Arman Tsarukyan.
Bisping's prediction became even clearer when he said that Arman would probably do what Saint Denis did to Ruffy. He acknowledged that Ruffy is an exciting and dangerous fighter, mentioning his spectacular spinning wheel kick knockout, but he expected the Russian to eventually get him to the ground. Bisping also believed the fight could be a major step toward Arman's next title opportunity. If Tsarukyan wins, Bisping argued that beating a highly ranked and dangerous opponent like Ruffy should be enough to establish him as the next contender.
But if Arman Tsarukyan beats Mauricio Ruffy, and I'll say it early, right? He probably will. He'll probably just do what Benoit Saint-Denis did. Mauricio Ruffy, he's awesome to watch. I mean, look at that spinning wheel kick over Bobby Green, right? It was phenomenal, but more than likely, he's going to get taken down. Arman Tsarukyan, especially in Los Angeles, right, with a massive Armenian community, right, he's going to have a lot of support in the building. That's why he's on the card. That's why he was fighting Islam Makhachev there, right? He's probably going to ragdoll him, but he's going to have to make some noise on the microphone because Ali said for Justin Gaethje, it's only going to be a big fight, okay? Is that a big enough fight? Well, some might argue that that doesn't even matter, right? Because he's the #1 contender, and when you're taking out prospect after prospect, and you're beating people like Mauricio Ruffy, who's up there in the rankings, then he deserves it, and I agree.
Travis Herrick continued by focusing on Ruffy's physical advantages. He described him as a huge lightweight, standing around 5'11" with a 75-inch reach. For Herrick, those measurements were closer to what you would normally expect from a welterweight. He believed Ruffy's size, power, and striking made him a serious threat, especially because he actively looks for finishes. However, Herrick also admitted that Ruffy's wrestling remained the biggest concern heading into a matchup with someone like Arman. When Herrick moved on to Arman, he explained why Tsarukyan was considered by many fans to be the #1 contender in the lightweight division. He highlighted Arman's strong UFC record, his victories over Charles Oliveira and Dan Hooker, and his ability to dominate opponents with wrestling. Herrick acknowledged that Arman's striking was not his biggest strength, but said it was good enough to support his real weapon. Arman wants to get the fight to the ground, control his opponent, and finish with submissions or ground and pound. Bedtime MMA believes Arman Tsarukyan has a major advantage over Mauricio Ruffy because of the grappling matchup. While he gives Ruffy a real chance of scoring an early knockout with his dangerous striking, he thinks Ruffy's previous struggles against Benoit Saint-Denis are a major warning sign. In his view, Ruffy had moments where he could have stayed on top and used ground and pound, but instead chose to return to the feet. Against someone like Arman, that could be a serious problem. Ultimately, Bedtime MMA predicts that Arman will get the takedowns and dominate Ruffy once the fight hits the ground. He expects Arman to use elbows and ground and pound to wear Ruffy down, with a submission also possible. He does not expect the fight to reach the judges, and believes Arman will finish Ruffy inside the distance. Arman Tsarukyan versus Mauricio Ruffy has all the ingredients of a fight that could completely change the lightweight division. Arman has the wrestling, grappling, and experience to control the fight, while Ruffy has the speed, creativity, and knockout power to punish even the smallest mistake. That makes the matchup difficult to predict, because both fighters have a clear path to victory. The big question is whether Arman can take Ruffy down before the Brazilian finds his rhythm on the feet. If he can, his ground game could become the deciding factor. But if Ruffy keeps the fight standing, the danger level rises with every exchange. Either way, there is plenty at stake, with the winner moving closer to a title opportunity. Now we want to hear from you. Who do you think gets the win, Arman or Ruffy? Let us know your prediction and your opinion in the comments below, and tell us how you see the fight playing out.